Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. For your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1 hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about. So my guest this evening, Bill Seaton, is going to be talking about all kinds of stuff, and particularly his involvement now with the Veterans Administration and the work he's been doing now for some time there. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that because I think it's worthwhile for you to know what's going on and hear how Bill is feeling about that. How are you feeling right now?
Feeling very good, having a chance to tell this VA story, some good news about the VA.
You better believe it. And I'm a VA vet, and I love it too, so we're going to have a good time talking about that. But first, we'll do the first half of the show, which will be the personal part about who you are, and the guests will get an idea where you're coming from when you talk about what we'll talk about in the second half. And I'm always nervous whenever I start a show. I've been doing 15 years.
Me too.
So let's start off by finding out who you are and where were you born?
Stillwater, Oklahoma, 1946.
1946, all right. And I always have a trick question for my guests. Should I ask you right now or wait till later?
Shoot.
Why were you born?
I had the great good fortune of being in my father, in his, well, let's just say, my father met my mother on a golf course. And about 9 months later, I was born. And I'm not going to question why. I'm just very grateful.
Okay.
I'll be able to tell you more in a minute, I hope.
That's interesting, of course, you know. Is there anything significant or unusual about your cultural or racial heritage that's worth mentioning for the viewers?
Well, I found out when I got to Oregon that I was Irish and that I was an Okie because I came from Oklahoma.
An Okie?
Yeah, I never felt bad about that before or since, but I found out that's what I was. But I quickly became very comfortable in Corvallis, where I grew up. I had 2 older sisters, and they made life a lot easier for me.
Yeah. Did anybody give you a bad time for being an Okie?
Lots. But that quickly faded. Both my sisters were reasonably attractive. One of them was beautiful, and so I got to be Billy Seaton, Jean's younger brother. And that helped a lot to shine in her bright light.
Yeah. A religious preference, do you have one, or did you ever have one, or is that a fair question?
It's a fair question. I never really felt a strong religious pull until recently, when a lot of my friends, at 68, I've lost 2 or 3 friends, just one this week. And
one this week?
Yeah, we had our 50th high school class reunion this summer, and I had the great good fortune of spending a lot of time with him. He was my friend when we were riding bikes to school in grade school.
Boy.
And through junior high and high school, we weren't as friendly, but he was always my friend, and he had a bout of cancer about 4 years ago. I talked to him about it. I had no idea that he was sick, but he told me that he was really sick. And what he didn't tell me was that he was not going to do another round of chemotherapy. And just today, I found out that he had died. And if you'll allow me to tell the story, I was quite stricken.
Of course.
I got a book in the mail with no name on it, but with an address in Corvallis that I didn't recognize. And I wondered who it was from, but I had a friend who lives out west of Corvallis towards Philomath, and I figured it was him, that he just quickly put it in the mail because he wanted me to see it. The book was Heaven is for Real.
Heaven is for real.
And, you know, not being particularly religious but wanting very much to believe, I thought I'd read it. And it's a story about a preacher who has a couple children, one of whom had very close to a near-death experience in a hospital. But after they healed this youngster, he told his father and mother things that he couldn't possibly have known about watching them from up above, from heaven, and hence the name of the book, Heaven is for Real.
Yeah.
But what the serendipity part of it for me was, I still didn't know who it was from. I couldn't figure it out.
You still didn't know.
And then today I got a phone call, or I called a friend who had been one of the people on Facebook that told me that Craig had died. And he said, go look on Facebook and see the picture. At the 50th reunion, they took a picture of me in the middle, Craig McEldowney on one side, and Butch House on the other. And they chose to put that up on the Spartan Corvallis High School Facebook page. So, another friend deceased. But I realized then it was Craig McEldowney that sent me that book. And he sent it anonymously because he didn't want me to know or call or say, how you doing? Or he had decided that he wasn't going to do chemotherapy anymore.
That was his way of handling it, huh?
Yeah. And so I was both thrilled and shattered at the same time.
Of course.
And that he thought of me, because not everybody got a book, and not every book was heaven is for real. And so, it's interesting you asked me the religious question. I'm at an age where I know I'm not going to live another 20 or 30 years. I'm going to try, but, I've got a bad hip, and the VA is going to help me, and blah, 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 maybe never. The important thing is he really got my attention and reminded me that the clock is ticking for all of us.
And you remember I told you I'm 86.
Yeah, I know. I was impressed.
I got another 10 or 20 years ahead of me, so don't count your blessings before they're gone.
I'm eating my vegetables right there.
Yeah. So do you identify with a particular religion now? Muslim, Catholic, Christian, Hindu, or nothing, or atheist? Or
sort of pantheistic, sort of, if I had to pick one, one that doesn't think killing people for religion is a good thing. And the other extreme is one that is open to all people who are good, generous, kind people. I try not to get into the dogma. I was at Episcopalian church when I was very young. I was an acolyte and all that, and all the pomp and ceremony didn't really fit for me. And but I do honor that if people have that belief. I'm not particularly religious, although I want to be. I just have trouble believing,
I want to be, but I have trouble believing. I never heard it put that way before. Yeah.
Well, I see so much misery and awful stuff. I mean, we're going to talk about the war a little bit. That's where I started realizing that most of the world is a nasty, brutish place, and that it's not everybody that gets to grow up in a sleepy little college town and then go off to that place in Vietnam and then come back to that sleepy little college town, a completely different person.
And the media doesn't tell us very much about the other side of that, where there are some nice and decent and kind and loving human beings too.
Yeah.
So the media, all they tell us about is what you said just now, a brutish, mean species.
I like the Baha'i faith, and I am
I like
very
that
fond
too.
of them. They're open to anyone that's kind and good. And that's, if I had to choose one, I would probably choose that one.
Yeah. I was a Roman Catholic kid, altar boy, and the whole thing. Was supposed to be going into the priesthood, but I found out that was premature. I shouldn't have made that decision because I was just too young. And enough of that. Right now I'm an atheist instead of an atheist, which is a pejorative. An atheist. I don't know, and neither do you. But so let's talk a little about your education. You got a bachelor's degree?
I did, and I'm very fortunate to, my dad was a professor at Oregon State, and his hobby was golf and crossword puzzles. And
golf and crossword puzzles.
Yeah, and also he turned me on to Corvallis, Oregon had the first Oregon Public Broadcasting radio station, KOAC Corvallis. And from the time I was 7 years old, I watched that with him. Whenever it was on, he'd say, "Bill, it's on," and I'd come and sit and watch with him. And I got to see all kinds of wonderful people. And I'm a complete OPB advocate now. I give them what little money I can every year. And it's the never-ending story of how, if I was going to create a TV network, I'd do that. Something like that. Something for everybody. Field Guide and OPB and Charlie Rose and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Give everybody a shout.
Is your cell phone off?
No. It will be. That was my beep, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I forgot to turn mine off too. Did you notice that? The camera wasn't on me, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So then, any other education worth mentioning other than your formal education?
Well, when I flunked out of Oregon State and got drafted.
Flunked out?
I partied my butt off. All my friends are in fraternities, and I lived a block from the campus, so I didn't want to do that. It was a good thing I didn't. But the important thing was I got very quickly drafted into the service. And what I didn't know was that if you're strong and you're a straight shooter, you go right to the infantry. And this was 1966, and so everybody that got drafted, pretty much all of us ended up in the infantry. But being young and naive, I thought, I'm going to do the best I can at everything. I was in good shape. I could run and carry people if they got hurt and stuff like that, and I was a very good shot. I qualified. I sent my parents happy. I qualified sharpshooter, not knowing that I mean, everybody was going to Vietnam anyway, but you know, they put me right up in front, and I got to be a squad leader in training camp and all that. But the important thing was I liked it. I liked having my life in my hands, and at least being able to say what we needed to do and have some control. So I went to a special school to prepare for leadership in Vietnam, and when I got there, I made sergeant in about 6 months. And so I became a squad leader, just this squilly little 19-year-old kid in the middle of the Iron Triangle. And I mean, you learn fast there.
Of course.
And the thing that I learned, one of the most important things that I learned was that much of the world that I was helping to support was full of angry black people. We went over on a troop ship, and I was just this little guy from Corvallis who didn't understand anything about gangs or anything like that. But on board the ships, it quickly paired out. The black people on one side, the white people on the other. And if you ventured over there, you could get beat up or really hurt or thrown overboard. You know, they just didn't suffer fools gladly. And so I made a really good friend with this guy who was one of the leaders of the pack. As I recall, he looked like not Muhammad Ali, but the leader of the really radical blacks. Can't think of his name right now. But only backwards did he look like that. At the time, he was just a strong, smart guy who was a natural leader. And so I started talking to him, and just basic stuff like, you know, where'd you grow up? And he grew up in one of the hardest parts of Detroit. And he was as angry as anybody I'd ever seen, but he was also brilliant. Very smart. Always had a book with him. He was always reading. On the ship, we were there 19 days on the ship, so we had a chance to read.
Sure.
And one of my jobs, I got to be the radio person in the middle of the night to stand watch for any radio right next to the officer's lab or office, where there was a whole wall full of books. I read Catch-22 on the boat going to war.
Oh my gosh.
I never will, I couldn't believe my good fortune. I thought I was so far from, it couldn't possibly be like that.
Would you recommend people reading Catch-22?
Yes. And a lot of books like that. But when I got there, I realized the irony of all these coincidences of meeting all these people and being prepared to having to give orders to people that were black or Mexican or Hispanic or didn't give a shit about me because they'd been so used to being kicked around by people.
A family show, watch your language.
I'm sorry.
You can get away with that one.
Yeah, no more beeps for me. But the important thing was that I learned for it. We had one thing in common. We all wanted to go home in one piece. We wanted to do our job and do what they asked us to do while we were there, but we wanted to go home.
So that was an extra education beyond your bachelor's degree.
I had no clue what inner city LA was like. I had no clue. This guy from Brooklyn used to call me Easy Money. He would never call me Sergeant. He said, easy money, come on. You know, I said, what do you mean easy money? He said, you know, well, you figure it out, you know. And it was always this contest of wills with him. But, you know, eventually I just realized, you're not in my squad, I don't have to deal with you. And so I just, you know, made peace with him and walked away. But I did learn an awful lot about what goes on in most of the other parts of the world in Corvallis.
Would you get rid of, throw away that learning, that additional education?
No. It was a great education. It was, some of my best friends in Vietnam, I'm still in touch with one of them who's, I guess he must be retired by now, but he's a teacher in LA. And Jeff, I can't think of his last name now, but he was a good man, and he listened, and he wanted to live, and so we all made it. Most of us made it anyway. So
that learning is useful for you nowadays in your life in this present day, the learning you got there.
We're all pretty much alike underneath. We have different forces that work on us as we grow up, but most people that I care about and like to be around, like the people I work with at the VA, realize that everybody needs some kind of help.
What forces that influenced you growing up that has you the way that you are today? You just mentioned that, forces that make us up what we are.
Well, I'd have to say my father, for one. he was always reading something, always doing crossword puzzles, and had an open mind that I found quite unusual. A lot of my friends' fathers were, just not as open-minded, and they'd beat their kids up and stuff. Dad never hit us, never hurt us, and yeah, he never even made us feel bad except with words. He could say, that probably wasn't the best choice.
And the way he said it.
All right, but it was. I parented that way. I have 3 kids and 2 grown sons and a daughter who's also grown, 33, 30, and 27. And I never ever raised my hand to them. And I thought of my dad a lot. I thought that's just the way it is. I'm not going to ever do that either because I respected and admired him.
Do your kids respect you and like you?
Well, I wished I had a picture of Father's Day. My son had a big Father's Day get-together where they brought their wives and Kelly brought her boyfriend, and we had a picture taken out on this backyard that is treasure because we're all holding each other's arms and together smooshed up on this little concrete pad, and I thought, that is a Father's Day to remember.
Yeah. And what kind of work have you done since you finished the military?
When I came back to Oregon State, I knew I wanted to finish college, and so I had a bunch of friends that were ahead of me, one of whom was working in the computer center at Oregon State, the Milne Computer Center this is early 70s. And he said, you should come in and apply for this computer job that we have here for student, I guess, I don't know, there's some program that they had for students, soldiers. And so I came in, I got the job, and I started off into the computer business when it was just being born. I mean, they had monstrous big discs that you'd take out and put in. It was just like Stone Age. But it was the beginning. And I managed to create about a 35-year high-tech career working for a number of companies on my list. I worked for DEC for about 7 years as a PC guy, and then the PCs got into the networking business with CompuCom and several others, and had a good long run. I hit most of the computer business at the right time. So I kind of rose in the market and became one of the top salespeople in Portland in terms of the PCs.
Really?
Well, there was a bunch of us. Everybody was buying. It was like a buyer's or seller's market. And of course, then the recessions come along, and I went to work at Intel 1999, just before the internet bubble burst, in their online services group, where they were working every day, all day, with people that have websites and needed staffing. And in 2003, the bubble burst, and they whacked the whole division.
Including you?
Including me. And I hung on for another 9 or 10 months, but not being an engineer or being a salesperson around engineers, I was a dog out of water. So a fish out of water.
Yeah.
The important thing was, after my wife left, my life sort of careened out of control, and the VA came in there and helped me want to continue to live and be productive. That's another story I take great pleasure in telling because it's a segue into how the VA helped me want to live again and not only just live but thrive.
So you were pretty depressed when your wife left.
Shattered. I was going to be married forever. Dad only got married once, and Mom too. I mean, it was just like, this is not going to happen, and she left.
How long did it take you to recover enough to continue with a regular life? The grief
10,
period.
11 years.
10, 11, that a long time.
I wallowed in
Bill.
self-pity for a long time, and my sisters kicked me around for a while, and wisely so. They loved me, but they said, this is common. It's unfortunate, but your life goes on, and as it happens, I am as happy as can be with a new sweetheart in my life that works with my son at Kaiser and came to his wedding, and we danced the night away 2.5 years ago.
Say a few more words about your new sweetheart. Yeah.
She's a survivor. She's a Russian Jew who was told by the Russians in Moscow that there was going to be more pogroms and that it would behoove her and her family and a whole bunch of people to leave.
Oh, man.
So they got to take 75 pounds of things and get on a plane, and they got refugee status here in the United States. And she was a nurse of some sort, a 2-year nurse in the hospitals over there. So she quickly got a phlebotomy degree over here, low-level nursing, but has worked at Kaiser for 17 years and bought a couple houses and supported a son through college. And She's a marvelous woman. She is. I thank God every day for her. Because she's strong and smart and still loves me.
Still loves you?
Yeah.
In spite of you?
Yes, in spite of my many feelings.
Wonderful, I can tell. Is she going to see this show, or you think?
I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out how to go out on the web and find your, however you are on the internet. I can get there. I mean, I can
We'll talk
navigate
about how to
there.
do that.
All right.
But in the meantime, look right in that camera and tell her what you think of her.
I think you're the best thing that ever happened to me, except for my 3 kids. But you're right up there in the top 4.
Yeah. I can tell. There's sincerity. But that's seeing you say anything with as much confidence as you said that just now. I guess he kind of likes you there, you know.
Yes, I do, Lydia, if you ever get to see this.
Now,
My sweetheart.
yeah. Political persuasion. Do you see yourself as left, right, center, or how would you characterize yourself in the political continuum?
I am somewhere left of Attila the Hun. I am radically, democratically motivated. I am active working for different campaigns. I do phones. I've spent so many years on the phone that I'm not daunted by calling somebody and say, please vote. Please vote. I worked for Suzanne Bonamici. I worked for our president. I've done whatever I can, except I can't give gushers of money. I can only give Citizens United is a very sore point for me. I figure we have to equalize it somehow. So I'm on the phone. I'm working the precincts. I might even go knocking on doors. I don't know.
Say a couple of words about Citizens United for the viewers, and maybe a few who don't know what that means and why you're working on it.
Citizens United is a recent Supreme Court decision where the 5 Republican appointees came with a decision that unlimited gushers of money, disguised as political contributions, which we all know trickle down to the senators and representatives that need that money to keep their jobs so they can do the Citizens United bidding. Forgive me for being so, I'm angry as hell about that, but the Supreme Court blessed it. So until we can get a different Supreme Court or Supreme Court judges that see the common sense of who can win the money wars, the rich people or the poor people? Don't tell me. The rich people are going to win.
Well, don't they have the right to use their money any way they want to?
Supreme Court said money is speech. That's why I disagree with them. They got more speech than we do.
I'm being devil's advocate, as you know, probably. Now, where did I meet you? You told the viewers where we met?
I'm not sure.
Naomi Klein.
Oh, Naomi Klein. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah, there was 1 million people there, and you were smiling from the beginning. It was like you're really comfortable. I was anticipating her too because she's one of my heroes, and willing to speak truth to power and write it all down so it can be verified and argued about. But she's very persuasive and well-spoken, and that was one of the best meetings I've ever been to at Powell's because there was so many people from the same tribe there that
Powell's
the vibe was
bookstore
good.
in Portland.
Yeah, on Cedar Hills.
Cedar Hills.
It was a wonderful. I recorded 55 minutes of her speech so that I could share with another person who's politically motivated and couldn't be there that night. But I've listened to it a couple times, and she continues to be a voice of reason when a lot of other voices are getting hoarse.
Yeah, I'm going to digress for a second.
Okay.
Last night I was at Portland State University, and there's a name, Winona LaDuke, mean anything to you? You know who that is? That
I
woman?
have heard the name, but I don't know.
Yeah, she was Ralph Nader's running mate in the presidential
really
campaign
good
some years
woman.
ago. She was a speaker last night.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed that.
One of the best I've ever had over the years. A great speaker, talking about the environment and those kinds of things related to it, and the pipeline and all kinds of stuff, and how her life has been on the reservation, and a marvelous storyteller.
She's an Indian woman, an American Indian.
Yeah.
Good for
Just
her.
delightful. I wish you could have been there to share it with me.
Well, I followed the Indian, their religion. You asked me about religion earlier in this conversation. Sure. Be gentle on the earth. Live within. I collect Indian sand paintings. You'll have to come to my house and see. Over the 10 years that I was at Oregon State working on campus, I bought conservatively about $10,000 or $11,000 worth of sand paintings.
I'd like to come and see what you've
all Indian symbols. Warbirds, fertility symbols, a whole range of symbols that I don't know exactly what they mean, but one of them is so heavy that I can't put it up on the wall now. It weighs about 80 pounds. Agates, rocks, a whole bunch of different kinds of colors of sand and stuff because of their benevolence of living within what Mother Nature provided for them.
Yeah.
Simple religion.
So when Winona LaDue comes back to the Portland area, I'm going to get in touch with you.
Please.
And I'll go again. I'll see her time after time. She's absolutely delighted. I'm not going overboard too much with how she was. So let's continue on for a few minutes more before we go to the second half of the show. Any memberships in political, social, or civic organizations that you...
Well, I'm a Democrat. I try not to get too deeply into other partisan groups. I've learned to keep my mouth shut because not everybody agrees with my radical. Ralph Nader's books are on my shelf. Naomi Klein is on my shelf. You pretty much know where I come from.
Are you sure you haven't fallen off the left end of that continuum? I know I have.
Well, I'm not so strident and preachy about it anymore. I try to just let everybody else think what they think and do my best to be easy on the earth.
Yeah. Any persons from the past or alive today that you particularly admire or looked up to? Any names come to mind?
Well, you named one of them, Ralph Nader. I have another hero in Bill Moyers, who was very active and successful in Washington when I was young.
Yes.
He's still on OPB doing wonderful reports. He also has
He's ageless.
He's ageless, and he cares so much, and he gets the best people on his program to bring out issues and stuff that I haven't ever thought about, or I should have thought about but didn't, or that are persuasively enabling good things to happen in their own spheres. And it's encouragement. It's like the voice of reason isn't getting hoarse. You listen to Bill Moyers and you see people are out there doing things.
And he's from Texas, and he was a friend of Lyndon Johnson.
Oh, he was in his administration, wasn't he?
Yes, of course.
That's when I came back and voted. I remember I started to vote again. Wow, that's a trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a hero. And there are several others.
Why did you admire Ralph Nader?
Well, Ralph was fearless. He took on General Motors. He did right after, tilted right at the biggest windmill, And Elizabeth Warren, she is an incredible resource. She's wonderful. Her book is wonderful.
Yes.
I read her book right after I read Thomas Piketty's book, and I thought, this is pretty steeply, this is a lot of academic stuff. But I get the point. The rich are getting richer.
What those people are doing to me is making me make protest signs. I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, and I wear political protest signs, not protesting anywhere out in the world. My wife gets embarrassed sometimes because...
Well, good for you. You have something to say.
Yeah.
And you can back it up if anybody asks, what do you mean by that?
But each of us has some minimal thing we can do to change the direction that I think that our country is heading in.
Yeah. The rich get richer, and they control politics, and Citizens United has played into that heavily, and it's hard to see any way out of this.
Why don't you dig up some of that money in coffee cans in your backyard and give half to me, and then we'll both be rich?
If I had some, I'd surely share it. Sure.
So it looks like the clock says we should take a break and then come back and talk about other stuff and what you're doing in the VA and Viet Nam, whatever.
I look forward to that.
Mr. Director. Thanks for staying tuned, and for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, you're watching Conversations with Dr. Don. It's a program where I interview interesting people like my guest here, Bill, about who he is and what he's been about in his life and what he's probably going to be doing from hereafter. And let's continue on with the second half of the show and see where we go from here. It's been really enjoyable so far. You're an interesting character. And I still want to steal your coat.
Oh, well, it's a 48 long, but you fit it. You just look, you could double-breast it.
Yeah.
You're a thin guy. Go ahead.
So let's talk about You talked a little about how you got into the military, into Vietnam, and we want to take the biggest part of this show to talk about what you're doing with the VA now and that thing. But you want to say anything more about what went on for you, what Vietnam was like for you at all, or a few words, and then we'll continue on to what?
Yeah,
It's your ball game right now.
the words that I now can say with candor is that I discovered how to smoke pot and lower my stress in Vietnam. You could walk into any town, Bien Hoa, Phuc Vinh, Cat Lai, and a little guy would walk up to you and offer you a package of pre-rolled joints in a Marlboro package.
Really?
$2.50, $3 piastres. And you zip the top off and go back to your bunker and feel good, that peaceful, easy feeling until the bullets started flying. But the important thing was it was a bad habit. And I smoked the whole time I was there. Everybody did. We were all smoking pot. And we left long before the North Viet, or the Chinese and the North Viet, or Vietnamese, started bringing in the opiates and getting so many guys addicted. I mean, heavy opiates, heroin, and all this.
I was in the occupation at the end of World War II in Yokohama, and I experienced some of the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, it was another way of warfare. But so when I came home, I was stupid to bring a pack of joints through the Tan Son Nhut Air Base before I got on the plane. I didn't even think about it. And then when I got off the plane, I realized I just walked through with a felony. I could have been in prison 30 years. And I know friends of mine that did go 20 years that got caught with a single joint. But anyway, the important thing was I got scared, and I realized that that's a dark path to go down. And I stumbled through college. I got pretty good grades, but I smoked a lot of pot because everybody was smoking pot in 1968, 1970. And I had roughly a B average, but it was just scraping by. I was always stoned or playing foosball or basketball. To have a sponge for the rage that I was feeling. I didn't realize it was rage for a long time, but I had this tight. I couldn't talk about anything. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want anybody to know that I just got home from Vietnam. And in that context of that time, I thought I'll just play basketball, I'll do my physical exercises and lift weights and get rid of this demon in me that says I got to smoke pot to live, And so I hit the computer business, and I've already told you a little bit about that, but the thing that comes most to mind is that I learned how to medicate badly, the wrong thing. And I struggled with that for another 20 years.
20 years?
Yeah, only
medicating.
Alcohol and the business life of taking people out to dinner and wining and dining, going to good restaurants on expense accounts and stuff. It was an easy trap for me.
Sure.
And so, but then I finally got this sense that I wanted to be healthy. And when my wife left, I was in mentally a mess. So I didn't have any resources until it whacked. I had nobody to go to, nobody to pay my medical bills or my mental health bills. So I went to the VA and I said, I'm pretty lost, and told them my story, and they knew that I had been a Vietnam vet. And so they fast-tracked me into mental health care, where every time I'd have a session with them, about once every 2 weeks, they'd say, any thoughts of suicide? And at first I thought, no, hell no. And after they asked me for about 5 or 6 months, I began to realize that I had contemplated it. I just want to end this clatter in my brain, but I didn't know how to ask for help. And that's one of the things I want to make so clear, that in Portland, there's a big hospital up there, right next to another big hospital. And there's some new ways that you can ask for help. Anonymously, quietly, talk directly to your primary care physician through My Health eVet. This is a website that they've created that's international in scope.
Can you get a shot of this? Which one shall we go for?
It's free. If you're an honorably discharged veteran, or now they've even lowered it to, most of the people that are dishonorably discharged have drug problems and need this more than anybody else. So My Health eVet. If you've got access to the web, you can Google myhealth.va.gov, or just put that in a web browser, myhealth.va.gov, and you'll go right to this website, and you can create your own account. If you have an email account that you've created on Google or AOL, it's just the same as that, but you have to be a veteran to get an account, an honorably discharged veteran.
And how long you been with this program?
I guess it's 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah, I quickly saw, because I grew up on the web, and I saw the value of this, that even if you're a homeless veteran and you have a library card, Washington County's got 12 or 13 libraries. I was homeless for a long time, for at least 4 or 5 months. In this one winter, I slept in a friend's camper car. Guy was
You were homeless.
Yeah, I was homeless. I hate to say it now, but I'm not afraid to now, because I had some dark days after my wife left and Intel whacked my division and I ran out of unemployment. I couldn't work. I had no mojo until I started talking to the people up there. First online, saying, I need some help. I'm not feeling very good about this. And so they fast-tracked me into the mental health group. And then I got a regular appointment weekly and a chance to feel good about having survived and having a chance to recreate a whole new life and looking at it from a different, instead of my life is ended, I get your life began. And it took me a while to fully embrace that. But through asking my doctor, what are my options on my Healthy Vet? I know you can take care of me physically, but is there anybody up there that I can talk to try to get my mojo back?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the doors started to open, and it was like a whole new world opened up. That is still pretty slow in opening, because as you've seen on TV and in the news, there's so much more need than there are doctors and hospitals and rooms.
And it makes me angry.
It makes me furious too, and that's why I'm doing this, and that's why I worked as a volunteer for over, 2,000 hours over a 2-year period when I was unemployed. It's 2006 and 7. I found this wonderful woman, Carol Cadello, wherever you are, you saved my life. I was at a veterans job fair. She was sitting there getting people connected to my Healthy Vet, and she said, what's your background? What have you been doing? I work in high tech. And she said, well, you're perfect. You should work for me. You should go get up to the hospital and volunteer. They go through this background check you wouldn't believe, back to your junior high. I mean, really, and all that. Finally, after 2 months, they called me to say, well, you've been approved. You can go work now, because you deal with patient records and things that you probably are aware of, that confidentiality is huge. And
you're working as a volunteer, not as a salaried person.
no salary, not for 2 years. But the happy news was, after I'd done it, and myself and this other woman, this wonderful black lady named Catherine Staffney. I hope you see this sometime, Kat, because you are the one that helped me want to do this even more. She was great with people, and she was a veteran, and she'd been almost killed in a robot accident in the Detroit after she'd gotten back. A robot fell on her in General Motors plant just before they went broke.
Yep.
And so she lost her pension. She had only the VA to, it was amazing. It's a horror story, but to her great credit, she came out the other side smiling with every intention in the world of showing everybody the value of my Healthy Vet. She happened to be working in the same volunteer pod that I was in. So we became friends. I'd take her to work, and we'd go break records on how many people we signed up. I'd work the room like a good salesman would do. You know, the people would walk in, and I'd say, would you be interested in better service from the VA? This was before it got stinky. This is 2002, 3, and 4. And they'd say, of course, what do I have to do that? Sign here, you know, and then they would be started in the process. They still had to create their own account, but it's free. And then after finally we got them to give us a PC so we could actually create their account on the spot for them. So they'd walk out of there with a valid account we'd see, make sure before they left.
An account with the VA.
An email account directly to their primary care physician and the staff that works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news about this, beside it being free, is that they share more than just the zip code with OHSU.
OHSU is?
The Oregon Health Sciences University, that is huge and even bigger than the VA hospital right next door.
Because we go all over the country and all over the world. You know,
yeah.
Uh-huh.
The good news for me was that I had discovered how to ask for what I needed and how to tell other people how to get what they needed. And it was a great part of my healing, to the point where I look forward to going to volunteer work every day. And the doctors would laugh at me saying, are you trying to sell that same thing again? And I said, you bet I am. I want them to come and see you. And we'd play these games that made me realize I was in the right place then. That's exactly what I should be doing. And then one day they got some funding, 9 months of funding, and they called me up and they said, would you be interested in a job at the VA doing what you've been doing for free? Where do I start? I got a 9-month gig out of it. And it ended about a year ago now. But it's It was great fun because I would sit in the office. For those of you that are local here in Portland, the main VA hospital has an office in the pharmacy, room 104. Please go there whenever you're there for an appointment. Walk in and say, what is this My Healthy Vet thing and how do I get it? Before you leave, you can have it. I mean, you have to sit down, show your VA ID card, and then sign a form saying you'll play by the rules. And then you'll have it by the time you get home.
Tell them again, repeat what you said a minute ago, how to get it.
At the Portland VA Hospital, there is a small office in the pharmacy on the main floor just as you walk in, room 104. If you walk into the pharmacy, you look to your right, you'll see the office I worked in for 2.5 years unpaid and then 9 months paid. And ask to help create a My Healthy Vet web account. You'll
My Healthy Vet web account, okay.
My Healthy Vet web account, yes. It's free for, if you're a veteran with a, I think now you can have less than an honorable discharge and get it because there's actually veterans courts now that are going back and looking at people that got busted for pot in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And trying to get them back to the real world or at least getting their record cleared so that they don't have felonies on their record.
Yeah.
And so it's that's another good thing.
And that's ongoing now.
It's ongoing now. There's a woman in Vancouver named Linda Maddie that I volunteered to go to work for, but at the time they didn't have the process down, how they would go and parse out the people in jail who were going to get the help and those people who weren't, that were veterans. A very tough
work.
King Solomon kind of decision.
Of course, yeah.
But there's never been a better time to go to the VA for help because there's funding. Some funding I want to talk to you about in a minute that I recently got called Purchased Care.
Yes.
I had waited. I have an arthritic left hip. It's bone to bone, and it's been hard for this tennis and basketball player to sit and watch other people play.
Yes.
So I got on the web and I started to find out what the heck options are there besides the VA or at the VA that maybe not well marketed or that maybe they haven't told anybody about. And I discovered Purchased Care through the good offices of my friend Catherine Staffney, who I worked with as a volunteer, because she got to go to OHSU and have a back operation. And I said, well, how did that happen? Isn't there a long waiting list for that too? And she said, I don't know, Purchased Care, they did it for me. I said, well, where's Purchased Care?
What is Purchased Care?
Purchased Care is, I took my salesman's hat and put it back on again, and I called the main VA hospital, 503-220-8262, and said, could you send me to Purchased Care? Thinking, shoot the shot, see what happened. They said, oh, sure, click. And I was sent to Purchased Care. And this wonderful lady, whose name I better not mention, answered the phone and answered my questions. I said, how long have you guys been there? How does anybody qualify for this?
And what is Purchased Care?
Purchased Care is what? Yes. And she said, well, it's not a novel idea, but it's been around for a couple years here. There's about 35 people working in the Vancouver office. It's a big office.
Yeah.
Now. So there must be a lot of money flowing through there, and it's the government's way of funding care outside the VA
system.
Go to, in this town, I believe Providence and Adventist. I don't think Kaiser's doing it yet, but at least 2 of the main hospitals here are doing this, where they simply take the overflow, give them new hips, new whatever they need, and the VA pays for it.
Yes.
But the way you get it, this is another, you have to be enrolled in the VA healthcare system. Okay.
Which I am.
Okay. Then you have to be a My Healthy Vet client, and then you have to ask your primary care physician, whoever's assigned to you, to refer you to Purchased Care. Presumably, the primary care physician will know, in my case, that I've been bone to bone for 6 months, and they have increased my med strength so that I can walk around and hike a little bit. But they haven't fixed the problem. They've just, cosmetically.
I remember not too long ago when I replaced my left knee, a slight digression here.
Yeah.
And they talked about I had to wait 2 years to have the knee replaced. It was bone to bone. And but then again, it may be longer than 2 years, because if somebody came in ahead of me who was worse off than I was, then they put me off in the future.
Priorities. Yeah.
So finally, I went to a private. So apparently I got that, didn't even realize it. and they took care of
Good.
it.
They didn't call it that.
It's a brand new world with this new knee, man.
Well, when I did this research on the web, I found out that they've made it public 2 years ago, 2+ years ago.
Yeah.
They just did it surreptitiously because there was so much more demand than there was capacity.
Yeah.
And so I felt bad about it at first. Like, why didn't somebody tell me about it? You know, like, I'm a person. And but it was just, I wasn't making a loud enough noise. And I finally got to the point where I just said, Doc, what are my options? I found that now that I'm on Medicare, Kaiser will give me a new hip for just the cost of staying in the room for what they said was 2 to 3 day recovery. Medicare pays for the operation.
Mm-hmm.
So I am now scheduled to have a meeting with the head of neurosurgery at OHSU to have Purchased Care do a laminectomy. My lower 3 vertebrae are coming together and causing me a lot of pain. And they made the decision.
The hip.
Well, they made the decision that the Purchased Care money would go for that because presumably they made a medical decision that was the most important use of the money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I haven't had a chance to talk to the doctor on the 29th. I'm going to ask him. I said, I've been complaining about the hip for 2.5 years. Stenosis is about 3-4 months old. So, but anyway, I'm not arguing with success. I have the money allocated and I'm going to have an operation on my back probably within a month or two to lessen the pain source there.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to Kaiser after I heal from that and get a new hip.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I want to be back on the tennis court here in a while. Maybe ever. I doubt it. But
where'd you get that tenacity from?
My good luck and people like Lydia that have shown me that no matter how dark it gets, how you have to leave your home, leave the family, to come where she just picked up and left and created a whole new life. It reminded me that, you never know what the tide's going to bring in. Tom Hanks, the castaway, not castaway, there was a movie that he was in about a desert island.
Yeah.
I kept saying that to myself. Well, I keep asking, and I keep finding good things there. But you have to dig, and you have to be a member of My Healthy Vet, and you have to have a primary care physician, and they have to refer you to this Purchased Care program.
So you talk to vets in this. You don't do just computer work.
No, I know a lot about the way the VA works now, having been inside the belly of that beast, as they say.
Do you deal person to person with vets in this work?
Any chance I get. I'm going back to work with Kat now that she's out at the Hillsborough Seabuck. And for those people that live close to Portland, a lot of veterans don't know that there are what are called community-based outpatient clinics now, Seabucks. There's one out on 116th and Gleason.
Yeah,
doctors,
that's where
nurses,
I go. That's where I go regularly.
There's one in West Lynn that's a nice, great big one right by the freeway as you go by exit 10.
This is the Portland area.
Yeah. And again, in the Portland area, there's one, where's the other one? In Vancouver, there's one. So there's clinics that they've now wisely started to put out in the community because parking at the VA is horrible. It's very hard. So, but anyway, that's if you're lucky enough to live in the Portland area.
I'm interested in any person-to-person contact through this that you talk to, and what's your experience with 1 or 2 people that you've been dealing with personally?
Well, the first 2 people that come to mind were computer literate people that had also been in the service and had, similar background to me. So I had a pretty easy path to them. I just said, I'm getting much better service in the VA using this, and you and I grew up on the web, so you'd be foolish not to take this free opportunity. And both of them are as far or as at least as advanced as I am with how to use all the tools. You can order your meds that way, talk to your doctor that way, see your appointments that way. It's a modern tool like Kaiser's Health Connection. All the hospitals have them around here, and I'm sure they do in all major cities and stuff. But you've already paid the price. If you've been a veteran and you're alive at this stage or any age, you can have access to this, but you got to know it's there, and you got to go be able to not be daunted by creating your own email account.
I'm thinking about, in my dealings through the years with the VA and the whole system, and like anything else, there's a whole variety of friendship and empathy in the humans that I'm interfacing with. Yeah. I'm a retired clinical psychologist, so I'm really involved in what goes on between human beings, and this is all required, the computers and the arrangement, but how is the interaction successful? Like, occasionally I'll get a medical professional and I'll have to say to him, you know, I really appreciate how you are as a human being with me. I'm not just a patient. And that's so critically important. So occasionally, on rare occasion at the VA, I would have somebody who was treating me like a number. And I carefully remind them in my own way, I'm particularly sensitive and I'm proud of it.
Well, you know, it's like this. My experience has been is that if you treat the doctors with respect, knowing that they're overburdened, overtaxed, and they're living under this numbers, get people in and out, keep people. Well, they have their share of stress, and so and plus they don't get paid very well.
Right.
And so I want to tell you about this latest purchase care option came out of a $17 billion funding that the VA finally got to start to fund some of these programs in many more places. Okay,
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, but to build hospitals and hire more physicians and build new community-based outpatient clinics and use telemedicine where they take a truck out with you can sit in a doctor's office like this and actually have a physical. It's like it's possible. They're reaching out.
It's incredible.
But it's so hard to fund it and then get the people to do it and have the doctors that don't want to go out and be away from home overnight. I mean, they're used to having cushy jobs in nice places, and God bless them for being doctors. But it's the VA that needs the doctors now. And so this $17 billion, I found out after my back operation was funded, they're broke here. They don't have any more money. When I said, well, can I get the same funding for my hip? And they said, well, you pretty much only get one taste of this wine. And so I thought, okay, great. I'm going to count my blessings. I'm going to go get my back operation at OHSU. And then I'm going to go to Kaiser and get my hip. And then I can walk and hike and be a grown-up.
Let me digress for a second again. I forgot what I was going to say. Let's continue on. This is my mind.
Well, no, it's okay because there's so much to say in so little time. If I make one impression to the people out there is that asking the right way for the VA is crucial. You have to ask this way. If you just go to your doctor and if you get in the VA system and say to your doctor, I have this and this and this malady, it could be months before you get an appointment. If you say, I have an urgent need to see somebody right away, or if you're a member of the VA, if you have a VA ID card, you can go to the emergency room anytime.
Oh, yes.
And walk in there and say, I need help right now. And by the way, I've got these other things. And supposedly, and obviously, it should be a bona fide issue. You can't just walk in there and pretend like that or they'll throw you out. But the important thing is that if you have My Healthy Vet, you can ask your doctor and doors open.
I remember now what I was talking about, thinking about. I heard Cuba has increased the number of medical people that they've sent to West Africa.
Yeah.
It was less than 100 or 120, and now there's 75 more. There's over 200 now. At that point in time, America had sent 6 or 7.
I know they do a good job of teaching doctors down there, and a lot of.
But what is the Cuban system like compared to the American system, where they can send all of these medical doctors, and America can send only 6 or 7?
Profit incentive. I mean, I don't want to speak for the doctors. I know that I've been impressed with what Cuba has done. They manage international politics pretty well. I'm sure there's a different kind of hell down there for other people, but the important thing is that they see a need and they meet it and try to do the best they can.
All over the world.
I commend them for that.
Yeah. Well, we're running low on time, so what do you say you tell the viewers what do you think would be useful for them to hear from you right now? Based on what we talked about, anything else you want to say to them? Look in that camera and talk to them.
Speaking from my own experience and from the heart, I have to say that you never know what the tide's going to bring in. You just can't give up. And I was close to it. In the early part of the last decade, I came very close to doing things I would have regret, very much so now. That, especially if you're a veteran, if you know a veteran or if you know of a veteran, and you remember this conversation, tell them, My Health eVet web service at the VA is another good way to ask for the help that you deserve. And The good thing about it is once you get in the system and have an email account, when you send your doctor an email, they're required to respond, they or their staff, within 24 hours. No more waiting until the 12th of never for the appointment to come in the mail. It's the best way to get services from the VA. So wherever you are, if you have a VA close by, call up and ask for the My Healthy Vet office. You can probably find somebody that you can go face-to-face with in a hospital near you if you live in a big city. They can do what my friend in St. Carol Cadallo did for me, sat me down and showed me how to navigate and increased my learning curve to the place where I realized there was a lot of good stuff there. Back when it was Stone Age, that was 6-7 years ago, it's much better now. Secure messaging works, and there's a lot of other features that will help you.
Okay. You going to stick with the VA?
Well, VA and Kaiser.
And Kaiser.
I have an alternative now that I'm old enough to have Medicare.
Yeah.
And Medicare surprised me. I didn't realize they'd pay for the whole operation because it's expensive. And I'm glad I don't have to pay that bill. $275 a day is what the hospital is. And they say 2 to 3 days. They told me, you're a healthy guy, you'll probably be out in 2 days. Oh, that's $750. I can afford that. So if you know how to ask, there's answers. But please consider this one, big one, My Healthy Vet. And you can Google it. Even better, go to YouTube and spell it exactly this way. MY space HEALTH space Y space vet. My Health eVet, okay? And you'll see
you got that down pretty pat.
Hours of stuff out there that's all reasonable and help you understand how to use this and how to get engaged in all the features, functions, and benefits. And YouTube, God bless YouTube. God bless you. Thank you for this opportunity.
I've enjoyed you so much, yeah.
Well, likewise, you're a fellow traveler, and I saw you when the population sorts itself out to Naomi Watts. Mm-hmm. I can talk to all of those people in there and we have something in common.
So shall we put up some PSAs, Mr. Public Service Announcements? I've got to tell you about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. Without the ACLU, I think our civil liberties would be further down the tube than they are. Go to the ACLU and learn more about what they're about and protect our civil liberties. Join the American Civil Liberties Union. Do you have another PSA for us here? We got End Corporate Personhood. MoveToAmend.org. Go to that site and learn how to end corporate personhood and take back our country and so on. What else we got? Oh, I got to thank you for watching. I do thank you for watching. Remember KFC. Not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable to you too. And you too. And you too, nurse. Thanks again. Good night.